Welcome back. We're returning another 5 questions for Network Plus to help you gain that certification. If you're struggling or if you're trying to get prepped for that certification, I always like to tell students that you should, when you finally decide that you're going to do a certification, right? Give yourself 60 days. Give yourself 60 days. Go ahead and order that exam now. Get it put in through CompTIA. And I want to point out that if you're a student, you have a .edu email address, or you're going to a boot camp or something like that where they provide you a core benefit, you can go to the CompTIA Academia website or academic website. Here, let me pull that up for you. So you can see what I'm talking about here, right? So here I have this awesomeness, and if I go to CompTIA Academia right there, this is a different website than what you would normally see with just CompTIA. And you have to have an edu email address, but if you do, you can go in here and get a substantial discount on your certifications. And you can buy a certificate voucher. Let's look at Network Plus. That's what we're doing today. Let's look at Network Plus. So Network Plus voucher, $178 for NT009. This is the newest one. I would recommend grabbing the newest one unless you've been studying for the 08. If you just started studying, I would do the 09. If you've been studying for a while and you're almost ready to take it, then definitely do the 08. But otherwise, do the 09. But I want to show you the price difference, right? That's $178 if you have an educational. But if I just do the CompTIA one, let's look at CompTIA here. Here is, and if you're looking to do the exam and you don't have a .edu email address, then you can purchase your exam through the CompTIA website. And there's kind of a substantial price difference, $369, right? So what is that? Almost 50%, just about, almost 50%, I think, with the voucher cost just for having a .edu email address. Never pay full price for your network vouchers, though. There are plenty of websites out there that will give you 10% off. I get asked every once in a while, do I offer a 10%? No, I don't have one. I'm afraid I don't. I'm sorry. But they're not that hard to find, right? You should be able to at least get a minimum of a 10 to 15% discount minimum, right? Which will save you a little bit, right? I mean, $36 is $36. That's let's see, with inflation right now, that's a cheeseburger at McDonald's, right? So you should be able to get a little bit of money off of that voucher, and that's really what I want to go to, right? We're in it for the education. I know education is not always cheap, All right, let's get into this though. We've wasted enough time. Let's jump into this. Security or Network Plus practice questions, bank number 2. Let's start this right. I want to remind you as we're going through this to probably go through and answer it on your own. Do not Google. Don't Google. Don't go skip ahead. Don't do all that stuff. Do your gut feeling. Remember, we learn from our failures, not from our successes. Let's jump into it. What does the acronym DHCP stand for? Very easy question to start the day off. Very easy question. I'll give you a few seconds on this one. What do you think? What does DHCP stand for? Well, let's get rid of the first ones, right? So I'll give you, if you need to, you can pause the video if you're still sorting through it. But if you're not, let's move on. It is definitely not C direct, and it's definitely not D direct. The first word is dynamic, right? It is definitely dynamic, right? So I can get rid of C and D just by knowing the acronyms. Remember, if you remember from my last video, 40% of your CompTIA exam questions, I firmly believe, can be answered if you just know what the acronym is. I strongly believe that, okay? So it's not going to be C and it's not going to be D because the first word is dynamic, right? All right, the second word is obviously host. So is it control protocol or configuration protocol? That's the million-dollar question, and it is configuration protocol. It's going to be B. B is going to be our correct answer right there. Dynamic host configuration protocol. I want to show you what we're talking about here. I've already got my Windows system up and going, so here it is in my VirtualBox, and that way I can show you all the IP addresses without fear of all that other good stuff. Let me bring it up for you right here. All right, let me drag this over. Here it is, over here. There we go. And I've got my Windows system. Let's full screen this sucker so we can see it. First thing I'm going to do is type in CMD. That's going to give me that command prompt. From that command prompt, I could type in arp-a, and I want to point this out. Let me see if I can blow this up. It's not going to let me blow it up. That sucks. All right. Well, we've got it, right? So if you could read this, you could see right on the very right-hand side that I have some IP addresses. Now, part of those IP addresses, I have type dynamic and static. And those static IP addresses are set up specifically to not change. It provides us a little bit of extra security in there because those are dedicated IP addresses with those MAC addresses. And you can see the MAC address associated right here. With dynamic IP addresses, the system decides what my IP address is. The system goes in and says, well, you're going to have this IP address. And so it's dynamic. And if I were to restart my Windows machine and maybe put some other machines on there at the same time, my IP address could change. And so it's dynamic host configuration protocol because it's configuring the protocols or configuring the hosts to a specific IP address associated with it. That makes it a DHCP, takes care of all of this for you. So that's what we're talking about there. Let's get into it. Let's go on to the next one. Let me go back into there. There we go. Dynamic host configuration protocol. Question number 2, which of the following IP addresses is a loopback address? Which one is a loopback address? And we have all of them at ones. Now, for those that don't remember, a loopback address allows me to ping this address, and from being able to ping that address, I can actually troubleshoot to my NIC, right? To my NIC. Now, I have to stop myself from saying NIC card. One of my students was like, so you're basically saying NIC card, network interface card, and I'm like, yes, I am 100%. I am saying card twice. I am doing card squared. So it's NIC squared, or in my case, a NIC card, network interface card, right? No, it's not that, right? It's just NIC network interface card. But I can ping this IP address, and it would allow me to troubleshoot my internal systems to the NIC card. And what IP address is that? Well, it's not 172. That would be a private IP address. That would be a private IP address. 172.16 through 31, right, is a private IP address. It's not the 10 IP address either. 10.0.0.0 or through 10.255.255.255 is all private IP addresses, which means they can be inside of our residential. And you probably guessed this one too. So is B. That would make that 127.0.0.1 is our loopback address. Now, for this one, I'm going to show you on Kali. Well, let's answer it. Let's make sure I'm right, and I am. It's 127.0.0.1. I think I skipped ahead a little bit on the last question, but that's okay. I'm sure that you understood that I knew the answer. Hopefully, let's go into Kali. There it is. It just logged off for me. So let me hit my nifty password. I'm going to open up terminal, and on here I can actually. I can blow that up. And if I type in ifconfig in my Kali box, it actually tells me LO. That's our loopback address. And here it is, inet 127.0.0.1. That is the loopback. It even tells you right there, running on that IP address. And there we have it. That is our loopback IP address. That is going to be our answer A. All right, moving on. Question number 3. What is the default port number for HTTP? What is the default port number for HTTP? And again, these are one of those things, not only with Network Plus, not only with Security Plus, but CYSA as well. You need to know the port numbers. You got to know port numbers, the common ones, right? All of these are common port numbers you would expect to see on Network Plus, Security Plus, and the CYSA exam. And I could tell you that I recently took the CYSA, the newest version. I've taken all 3 versions since they came out. And I will tell you that knowing these ports, they answered probably, I want to say 5 to 10% of the questions, 5 to 10% of the questions in the question bank. So I would definitely know them. They are important. They're definitely there. They're definitely there. Well, it's not 21. 21 is FTP, File Transfer Protocol. That's going to be 21. It's not going to be 25, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. Simple Mail Transfer Protocol is 25. That leaves 80 and 443. Both of these provide us internet access. Both of these are a form of HTTP traffic. One is secure, one is insecure, and port 80. Port 80 is going to be our correct answer for HTTP. Port 443 would be HTTPS. So again, if you remember the port and protocol numbers, that is something you should memorize as you're going through. And there we go. That's port 80. All right, moving on to the next answer. Next question, I should say. In networking, what does the term latency refer to? What does the term latency refer to? All my avid video game players, you probably know exactly what this is. You're probably thinking to yourself, I know this answer. I deal with it all the time. I know my son does. He's an avid Fortnite player and Overwatch player. I think he got out of Overwatch recently. I can't keep up with him. He's playing some new game, starts with a T or something. I don't know. Well, it's definitely not D. The strength of the wireless signal, that would be RSSI, also known as received signal strength indicator. That is definitely not what latency is. Latency has nothing to do with our wireless signal per se. Moving on, it's definitely not C, the number of devices on a network. I'm not even sure there's a technical term for the number of devices on a network, unless we counted subnet or something like that. But it really wouldn't tell us the number of devices on the network. It would tell us how many devices we had available, or how many slots we could put on the network would be in a subnet. But it's definitely not going to be C. Latency has nothing to do with the number of devices on our network. Although the number of devices on our network could affect our latency in some cases. That means it's either the amount of data that can be transferred in a given time period, or the delay between the request and the response. Well, if you answered A, you would be incorrect. I'm sorry, I apologize. A is not correct. The amount of data that can be transferred in a given time period, that would be throughput. That means latency is the delay between the request and the response. Video gamers often complain about this, especially if they're playing something like Fortnite, or like my son. He's like, they cheated. I'm like, they didn't cheat. And he's like, they cheated. I'm like, get good. I don't say that to my 10-year-old, but I have so many times wanted to. But the answer is going to be B. The answer is going to be B. You know, he's going to look at these videos years down the line, like 6 or 7 years. He's going to be like, I'm going to get into networking. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be like, just like you, Dad. And then he's going to watch this video. And he's going to be like, I can't believe that you said that about me. Get good? Really? All right, there it is. The answer is B. Moving on to our next question. Which command is used to test the reachability of a host on an IP network? Which command is used to test the reachability of a host on an IP network? This is an interesting question, because all of these are command line tools that we can use inside both Windows and Linux and Mac, right? So you should be familiar with all 4 of these commands. I'll give you a second to answer this as we ponder our existence. What do you think? Oh, what do you think? Well, it's not NS lookup. That would be name services lookup. And we can do this in a variety of different ways. I kind of want to showcase it. So I could do it on the Kali box. I could do it on the Windows machine. I think my Kali and Windows are both set up for host only. So let's do it on the web page. Let's do it on the web page. I could do nslookup.io. The command line for this is nslookup. And then you could literally type in the service you want to use, like Amazon.com. I can find DNS records, and then it tells me all the records associated with it. I can actually look at Google's DNS. I can do authoritative at Control D. Doesn't matter which one I do. NS lookup is name services lookup, and it tells me the different IPs associated with it and all kinds of other different information. But that is NS lookup. That is not going to test the reachability of a host. It's going to provide us the name services information. I love how Wireshark likes to update in the middle of a presentation. Let's look at ipconfig. ipconfig will tell me, much like ifconfig that we already showcased, ipconfig will tell me what is on my network, what my current configuration is for my network. Let's bring up that Windows system. Let's bring that up. I want to showcase this. There's MS right there. If I do an ipconfig like that, we can see here that it tells me what my IPv6 address is. It also tells me what my IPv4 is and my subnet mask. And if I had internet access, it would tell me what my gateway is. But this is a sandboxed Windows machine, so it doesn't have that. So we're not getting on the internet with this. But ipconfig gives me all that great information. That's what ipconfig gives, not what we're asking for in this case, which is the reachability of a host. Now, that leaves tracert and ping. Both of these will actually provide me the reachability of a host on an IP. So they are technically both correct. And this is pretty typical in CompTIA exams as well, where they give you two answers that could both technically be correct. And the real question is, which one is more correct? Which one is the better answer? So TraceRT will actually go through and it will eventually go. So if we did Amazon.com, it would go from my router and send an ICMP back. And then it would go to the next router in line and send an ICMP back. And it would go all the way down the route. It would literally follow the route and send an ICMP package from every point along the network path all the way to Amazon.com from where you live or where your computer's trying to go in there. And that would provide us a test to reachability of the host. However, Ping does a better job. Ping doesn't do all the routers. It literally just does Amazon.com and sends us back a direct response. That is the better answer, even though TraceRT does the same thing. TraceRT takes a longer time. That's really not what you use TraceRT for. We use TraceRT to troubleshoot the network to find out what's going on within the system. If we have a reachability error and we want to find out where the problem is, then we would use traceroute or TraceRT. A ping is to test the reachability of a host, a specific host. We don't care about all the stuff in between. We just want to know, can I get to that host and back again? That's ping. Ping is going to be our correct answer on B. If you got that right, congratulations. Give yourself a crisp high five. Moving on. Oh, I guess that was our last question. Last question for tonight. All right. Well, I hope this was a good learning opportunity. I hope that you found this to be informative. If you did, if you could like, subscribe, and hit that little bell icon, I would be appreciative of that. As always, my name is Dr. K, and we will see you next time. Thank you very much.